She didn't forget to reply. She didn't lose her phone. She saw your message, and she chose not to respond. Let that sit with you, because what you're about to hear isn't comfort, it's truth, and it's going to sting, but it will set you free. You ever stare at your phone, hoping for her name to pop up? You think, maybe she's just busy. You tell yourself she probably didn't see it. You even replay your last message in your head, wondering if you came off too eager, too cold, too whatever. Brother, stop. You're not confused. You're being avoided, and deep down, you know it. But you're not alone. In today's world, men like you are being trained to be soft, patient, and endlessly forgiving in the face of disrespect. We were told, just be nice. Give her space. Women are emotional. Just wait it out. No, you weren't born to be ignored. You weren't made to live on her terms. You are not here to be on standby. So today, we do something different. We stop making excuses. We stop hoping. We stop chasing. Because there's a reason she didn't text back. And more importantly, there's a reason why your reaction matters far more than her silence ever will. We're going to break down 7 fatal mistakes men make when she doesn't respond. These mistakes don't just kill attraction, they erode your identity. They make you forget who you are. And worse, they turn you into something you hate, a man waiting to be chosen, instead of choosing his own path. You might think this is just about texting, right? No, this is about everything. This is about how you show up in life, how you handle rejection, how you build or break the image of yourself in your own eyes. This is about becoming untouchable, stoic, stable, unapologetically grounded in truth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What she does, that's outside your control. But how you respond, that's your kingdom. And what you'll learn in this video will give you the tools to rule it again. So pay attention. This isn't just about how to text back or not text at all. This is about reclaiming your self-respect. And before we dive in, I need you to do one thing. Comment the phrase, "I choose me." Because from this moment on, that's the energy you need to carry into everything. You're about to step into a new version of yourself, one that never begs, never waits, and never loses himself for anyone. Now, let's begin. Mistake 1. Double texting. It starts with a simple vibration, a notification that never comes. One message, one moment, one vulnerable effort to connect, and then nothing. Your chest tightens, your breath catches in your throat. Your mind begins its descent into madness, calculating the seconds, analyzing the unsaid, dissecting your every word like a crime scene. You look again, still no reply. So you break. You send another message, maybe casual, maybe light-hearted, maybe dripping with subtle desperation, dressed up as just checking in. You hit send, and in that single instant, something inside you fractures. You don't even realize it yet, but you've just betrayed yourself. And not because she didn't reply, but because you believed the absence of her attention was a problem you needed to fix. You believed her withdrawal required your pursuit. You believed that if you just said it better, softer, funnier, or sweeter, she'd come back. But she didn't leave because you weren't charming enough. She left because she could. And every text you send after that, every follow-up, every second attempt cloaked as being thoughtful, it tells her one thing: you are worth more than I am. Let that burn. Because that's the moment you stop being a man and start becoming a question mark, a puzzle piece she doesn't care to place. You chase what's running from you. You soothe what doesn't ache. You answer questions she never asked, hoping that your vulnerability will trigger her validation, but she doesn't respond. Not because she didn't see your worth, but because she saw you doubt it. Women aren't drawn to uncertainty. They don't wake up wondering how to love a man who doesn't know how to hold the line. And this isn't cruelty, it's nature. It's coded deep within. Attraction doesn't grow in the soil of desperation. It dies there. What you call persistence, she experiences as pressure. What you call care, she feels as clinging. What you call consistency, she receives as compulsion. And when she senses that your mood is dictated by her reply, she no longer sees a man, she sees a mirror, reflecting her every move back at her. That's not desire, that's discomfort. And discomfort leads to distance. Every double text you send is a confession. A confession that your emotional state has now become her responsibility. And that burden? She didn't ask for it. She didn't agree to carry it. And she won't. So she withdraws further. And you double down. You get clever. You try humor. You try poetry. You try silence for a day, then return with a friendly check-in. And every time, the grip around your own throat tightens. You think you're showing care. You're showing dependence. You think you're being persistent. You're being predictable. You think you're chasing connection. You're chasing closure. But the truth is even darker. You're chasing the version of yourself that you lost the second you decided her attention meant more than your self-respect. And you can feel it. The pit in your stomach, the ache in your chest, the fog in your mind, because on some level, you know what you've just done. You've handed her the pen and asked her to rewrite your story. You've stepped out of your own life and asked someone else to define your worth. And she won't. Not because she's evil, but because she doesn't have to. She already knows where she stands. You're the one who's confused, so you spiral. You wait, you scan, you analyze, you invent stories to justify the vanishing act. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's dealing with something. Maybe she didn't see it. But deep down, you know, she saw it. And she chose not to reply. That's not a crisis. That's clarity. But you don't want clarity. You want comfort. And comfort is the enemy of becoming. Because men aren't forged in ease. They're forged in absence, in rejection, in the brutal honesty of being unwanted. But instead of rising, you reach. And every reach takes you further from yourself, until eventually you don't recognize the man in the mirror. He's anxious, he's overthinking, he's desperate for signals, for hints, for scraps, all from someone who stopped thinking about him the moment she closed the chat. And here's the tragedy. Every time you double text, you're not just losing her, you're losing you, your edge, your confidence, your focus, your purpose, all sacrificed at the altar of maybe. Maybe she'll see how much I care. Maybe she'll change her mind. Maybe if I just try one more time. No, stop. Look around. Your life is waiting. Your strength is asleep. Your future is knocking. And you're wasting it trying to resurrect a conversation that already died. That's not love. That's addiction. So how do you break free? You stop. You delete the chat. You put down the phone. You stand up. And you remember who you are. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to build, to lead, to move. You're here to become. And every second spent waiting for her is a second stolen from that mission. You don't double text. You double down on you. You rise, not because she replied, but because you remembered that you never needed her to. That's power. That's clarity. That's the first step home. Mistake 2. Apologizing when you've done nothing wrong. It begins with that aching need to be understood, to be liked, to be seen as good, to be told that you're enough. You feel her slipping, her interest fading, her messages slowing or disappearing altogether. And what do? You fold, you crumble into an apology. Sorry if I was too forward. Sorry if I said the wrong thing. Sorry if I upset you. You apologize for your existence, for your truth, for your voice. And in doing so, You throw away your spine, not because you actually did something wrong, but because you're afraid that being misunderstood will mean being rejected. And that fear, it governs you, controls your words, shapes your reactions. You think if you just soften enough, she'll come back. If you just take responsibility for everything, even things that never happened, she'll see you as the good one. But what she sees isn't virtue. It's weakness. It's insecurity masquerading as humility. It's a man begging for acceptance in the language of guilt. And that smell, that scent of doubt and desperation, it's repulsive. Not because you're bad, not because you're broken, but because you've made your identity negotiable. You've made your worth dependent on her interpretation. That's not kindness. That's surrender. You're not clarifying. You're confessing sins you never committed. And women don't chase men who collapse. They're drawn to the anchored, to the firm, to the unshakable, to the ones who speak with certainty and stand by their words, even if they're not perfectly received. But you don't stand. You bend. You reshape yourself in real time, hoping she'll approve the new version. She won't. Not because she's cruel, but because you've become something uncertain, and uncertainty kills desire. Think about the last time you were drawn to someone who didn't know what they stood for, who apologized for their preferences, who walked on eggshells to avoid offending. It wasn't respect you felt, it was discomfort. That's how she feels when you say, "Sorry if I upset you," knowing full well you didn't. You're not apologizing to repair, you're apologizing to remain, to stay in the picture, to stay on the list. But real men don't barter for love. They don't trade authenticity for access. They show up as they are, director, honest, unapologetic, not because they lack empathy, but because they value clarity over approval. Every time you say sorry out of fear, you teach yourself that your truth is dangerous, that your intentions are wrong, that your natural masculine presence must be edited and polished to be acceptable. And that programming, it runs deep. Soon, you're not just apologizing in texts, you're apologizing in life, in how you walk, in how you speak, in how you lead. And it all began with one message you should have never sent. An apology that taught your nervous system that rejection is fatal. It isn't. Rejection is redirection. Rejection is revelation. Rejection is refinement. But only if you stand still long enough to learn the lesson. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That means no fake apologies, no emotional bribery, no cowardice hidden behind fake compassion. If you are honest, clear and respectful, then your work is done. The ball is in her court. And if she doesn't want to play, you leave the court entirely. Not because you're angry, not because you're bitter, but because you don't shrink to stay invited. You grow to stay grounded. So next time the urge rises in your chest to send a just-in-case apology, stop, breathe, ask yourself, am I sorry or am I scared? If it's fear, don't send it. Sit in it, own it, then walk through it without typing a single word. Because nothing kills attraction faster than emotional self-erasure. Women don't want men who make themselves smaller. They want men who can hold space for tension, for misunderstanding, for delayed validation, without crumbling. And you are capable of that. You're capable of being misunderstood without losing your voice, of being disliked without changing your truth, of walking away without losing your center, but only if you stop apologizing for being you. Your peace doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from being aligned. Your power doesn't come from being forgiven. It comes from being certain. And certainty only comes when you stop editing your soul to fit into someone else's script. So burn the false apologies. Walk with clarity. Lead with strength. And if your truth costs you someone who never really saw it to begin with, then that's not a loss. That's a win. A win for your dignity, a win for your future, a win for the man who refuses to say sorry for showing up as his whole self. That man, he doesn't beg, he doesn't bend, he builds, he rises, he becomes. And no woman needs to reply to confirm that. He already knows. Mistake 3. Assuming she's busy. She's not too busy. That's the lie you tell yourself when the truth hurts more than you're ready to admit. Because facing the truth means facing yourself, the part of you that still clings to the idea that people always do what they would want done for them. But you're not dealing with yourself. You're dealing with someone who saw your message, had the moment to reply, felt the urge pass, and then did nothing. Not because she's evil, but because she could. Because when interest isn't real, communication isn't sacred. It's casual, disposable. And while you sit there refreshing your messages, she's not wondering how you feel. She's absorbed in a reality where your presence isn't felt, where your worth is optional, and where your name is just one in a long list she may or may not return to. That's the bitter pill, the painful clarity. She's not busy, she's just not interested enough. And that's not meant to crush you, it's meant to awaken you. Because the man who keeps inventing reasons to excuse someone's absence is the same man who refuses to see how his time is bleeding. You were raised to believe that good intentions are enough. That effort always gets reciprocated. That patience is a virtue that always gets rewarded. But what they never told you is that sometimes patience becomes poison. It delays decisions that should have already been made. It keeps you invested in people who have already made theirs. And here's the hardest part: you already know. Deep down, you feel the difference between someone who's busy and someone who's dismissive. Busy people communicate, they acknowledge, they reply, even if brief. They show effort, even when life is heavy. Because interest doesn't need time, it makes time. Think about it. Have you ever had someone reach out to you and you couldn't stop thinking about replying? Even in the chaos of your day, even in the clutter of your thoughts, you made sure they knew they mattered. That's what real interest looks like. It doesn't vanish when schedules fill. It finds a way. It breaks through. But when you're on the other side of that absence, the brain starts lying to protect you. You say, maybe she didn't see it, but you watched her post. You saw the green bubble. You caught the update, and you ignored it, because the truth is heavier than denial. The truth is brutal. She's not thinking about you the way you're thinking about her. And that disconnect, that's where men get lost. That's where they spiral. That's where they start bending over backwards to earn back interest that was never real to begin with. But you're not meant to be bent. You're meant to be built. And that only happens when you look rejection in the face and stop dressing it up as confusion. If she wanted to respond, she would have. Not because she owes it to you, but because that's what people do when they're drawn to someone. They respond, they engage, they lean in. They don't disappear and expect applause when they return. So what does this mean for you? It means you have to stop wasting your energy trying to decode indifference. You have to stop investing in someone who treats your time as expendable. You have to stop lying to yourself that absence means effort, because what you tolerate becomes your standard. And if your standard is, I'll wait no matter what, then your worth becomes invisible, not to her, but to yourself. You teach your mind that you're not a priority unless someone makes you one. And when that doesn't happen, you start lowering your voice, dimming your light, shrinking your presence. You start existing in a mental loop where her delay becomes your despair. But it doesn't have to be like this. You can reclaim your attention. You can pivot your focus. You can stop checking your phone and start checking your own pulse, your goals, your mission, your next move. Because the woman who's worth your energy isn't the one who needs to be reminded that you exist. She's the one who sees it, feels it, responds to it. And if she's not showing up, that's not a mystery. That's a message. One you need to read clearly, not with bitterness, not with blame, but with brutal, sobering truth. She doesn't have time. Then don't give her yours, not as punishment, as preservation, as clarity, as self-respect. Because men who respect themselves don't beg for breadcrumbs. They feast at the table they built with their own hands. And that table isn't reserved for maybe, it's reserved for yes. And if she's too busy to give that, then you're too focused to notice she's gone. Mistake 4, checking her social media. You haven't heard from her. The space between your message and her reply grows wider by the hour. You start wondering, doubting, spinning stories in your head. And then you open her profile. You scroll, you tap her stories. You watch her post, smile, laugh, live. Not with you, not even for you. Just living. And that action, just a tap, becomes a chain. You check again the next day, then the next. It becomes routine, a habit, an obsession. Because somewhere deep down, you believe her feed will tell you what her lips never did. You're looking for answers in pixels, searching for signs in filters and captions. You want to see if she's happy without you. You want proof that she noticed your absence. But what you're really doing, you're giving her a front row seat to your suffering. You're watching someone who isn't watching you. You're following someone who stopped walking beside you. And it's tearing you apart. She posts a quote. You wonder if it's about you. She tags someone else. You feel sick. She looks beautiful and free, and you feel invisible. That pain you feel, that's not heartbreak. That's self-betrayal. You know you shouldn't be watching. You know it's pulling you deeper into a pit. But you keep going back, because your attention has turned into addiction. You don't miss her. You miss the version of yourself that felt chosen. And every story she posts is a reminder that you're not that version anymore. You've become a spectator in her world, a background viewer, a digital shadow, and it's killing your peace. But here's what most men never understand. She knows you're watching. She sees your name. She sees the views. She doesn't forget. She just doesn't respond. Because your curiosity has become confirmation. It tells her that she still has your attention, that you haven't moved on, that no matter how much time passes, you'll still be right there, watching from behind a screen. And that knowledge, that assurance, it kills any urgency she might have felt to reconnect. Why would she chase what's already chained? Why reply when she knows you never really left? And the worst part, she doesn't need to say a word. Her absence is loud enough. Her posts are silent reminders that life goes on, with or without you. And your continued watching is your silent agreement. You're saying, it's okay. I'll just keep waiting here. Keep watching, keep hoping. But that's not love. That's limbo. You're not her man. You're her fan. And every time you open that app, you're voting for your own delay. You're choosing distraction over discipline. You're sacrificing your future for the fantasy of being remembered. But you won't be remembered for watching. You'll be remembered for disappearing, for fading into a follower. So what do? You stop. Cold turkey. You mute. You unfollow. You block if you must. Not to hurt her, but to heal you. Because your healing doesn't come from watching her move on. It comes from refusing to. You take back your attention. You redirect your energy. You build something so powerful, so magnetic, that you no longer care what she posts. Your name stops showing up in her views. Your energy stops lingering in her feed. You disappear, not out of bitterness, but out of boldness. And something shifts. You stop wondering. You stop checking. You stop waiting. Because the man you're becoming has no time to observe someone who forgot to observe him. He's too busy building, growing, becoming. And soon, you forget what her story even looked like. Not because it wasn't beautiful, but because it was never about you. And now, it's not about her. It's about you, your purpose, your presence, your peace. The moment you stop checking her feed is the moment you start feeding yourself, your soul, your goals, your future. And from that moment on, you stop being a viewer. You become the vision, the man who doesn't watch. He creates, he commands, he continues, unshaken, unwatched, unapologetic. If you've ever felt that slow collapse inside after watching her stories while yours remain unanswered, then you already know why this isn't just about her. It's about you. It's about reclaiming the energy you've given away piece by piece. That's why I created the Stoic Relationship Blueprint, a brutally honest ebook crafted for men who are tired of guessing, waiting, and being ignored. Inside, you'll find everything they never taught you: how to stop making these 7 mistakes, how to rebuild your presence, and how to finally understand what makes her feel you without needing to chase her. It's yours forever. No expiration, no pressure. Just a lifetime key to the clarity, confidence, and calm you've been looking for. Download it once, and this knowledge is yours for life. Click the link in the comments, grab this ebook, and never be confused ever again. Mistake 5. Venting to her about how you feel. You waited, hoping she'd text back. You watched the hours stretch, every minute feeding the weight on your chest. You couldn't take it anymore. You snapped. And then came the message, the long paragraph. You told her everything, how much it confused you, how it made you feel like you weren't enough, how you didn't understand what changed, how her lack of reply wounded you in places you didn't even know were open. You bared it all, thinking it would pull her closer, hoping your vulnerability would spark her guilt or sympathy or even admiration. But all it did was expose a version of you that wasn't ready to be seen, because the man who vents his pain to someone who walked away isn't expressing strength. He's broadcasting dependence. He's not creating intimacy, he's revealing instability. And that, right there, is where most men fall. They confuse honesty with healing. They believe that pouring their hearts out to a woman who's already left the room will somehow make her turn around. But it doesn't. It never does. Because people don't respond to pain. They respond to presence. And when you send those long texts, spilling emotion like blood across a battlefield she never planned to fight on, what you're really doing is giving her power she never earned. You're asking her to fix wounds she didn't create. You're turning your pain into her responsibility. And that's not strength, that's surrender. You think your words will move her, but they won't. Because she didn't reply in the first place. Not because you didn't feel enough, but because she already stopped investing. And now you've shown her the one thing that guarantees she never will again. Your center is weak, your mood is movable, your validation is external. You've shown her that without her approval, you fall apart. And that's not a burden she wants to carry. Not because she's cruel, but because no one wants to feel responsible for another person's emotional equilibrium, especially someone they no longer desire. What you think is emotional maturity is perceived as emotional volatility. You've handed her a confession when all she did was skip a reply, and she reads it, not with awe, not with guilt, but with discomfort. She scrolls, she closes it. She tells herself you're sweet, but too much. She never answers. And now you're not just heartbroken, you're humiliated, because she saw your soul and didn't flinch. She saw your need and didn't move. And that's the kind of rejection that scars. But here's what you need to hear. Your pain is not wrong. Your feelings are not too much. Your honesty is not weak. It's the timing that betrayed you, the audience, the context. You gave a speech to someone who already left the theater. You wrote a love letter to someone who stopped reading. And it's not your truth that hurt you, it's who you gave it to. Because expression without discernment isn't vulnerability, it's self-sabotage. And now you're left alone, not just with heartbreak, but with the echo of your own voice, unanswered, unreplied, unheard. But let this be your lesson. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. And just because someone once smiled at you doesn't mean they're safe for your emotions. You don't owe anyone your pain. You don't need to explain how you feel to someone who already showed they don't care. You don't need to defend your disappointment to someone who never made a promise. You need to take that emotion, that raw intensity, and give it to yourself. Write it out, for you. Scream it into a pillow. Bleed it onto a journal. Speak it to a friend, a brother, a mentor, but never again to someone who didn't ask to hold it. Because your feelings matter, but they're sacred. And when you offer them to the wrong hands, they're not just ignored, they're weaponized against you. Not deliberately, but inevitably. Because what is shared carelessly is always received casually. And your pain, it deserves reverence. So hold it close. Let it teach you. Let it refine you. Let it drive you to rebuild, not from brokenness, but from boundaries. Because the man who learns to master his expression becomes the man no woman can shake. He speaks with intention. He reveals with purpose. He never bleeds where he's not treated. And he walks away, not in bitterness, but in breathtaking silence. Because his heart is no longer public property. It's earned. It's guarded. It's whole. Mistake 6. Waiting around. You're not just waiting for a message. You're waiting for your worth to be confirmed. Every hour you stare at that screen, hoping her name pops up. Every minute you hesitate to move forward with your life because maybe, just maybe, she'll reply, is a minute you're telling the world you're not ready to be chosen unless she says so. And that is a lie you must kill. Because men weren't made to wait for validation. They were made to move, to build, to conquer. And yet here you are, standing still, emotionally paralyzed by the possibility of a response. You delay plans. You second-guess opportunities. You say no to living because you're too busy waiting. But waiting for what? For someone who didn't prioritize you in the first place. For someone who showed you their energy, their rhythm, their truth, and you still chose to ignore it. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. You have to understand this at a core level. The woman who sees your value doesn't keep you on pause. She doesn't disappear. She doesn't string you along. And she damn sure doesn't leave you guessing. The moment she does, the answer is clear. But you romanticize the delay. You think the waiting makes you patient, noble, worthy. You imagine that somewhere she's thinking about you, torn up with regret, moments away from reaching out. But that fantasy is a cage, and you're building it brick by brick with every moment you stay still. Meanwhile, life is racing past you. Opportunities, strength, time, slipping through your fingers as you sit there, frozen by an unanswered message. And the tragedy is, you don't even see it. Because the pain of movement without closure feels too great. You want her to close the door so you don't have to. You want her to explain why she left so you don't feel foolish. You want her to release you so you don't feel like the one who gave up. But let me tell you something, closure is not given, it's created. It's forged in the fire of your decision to stop participating in your own neglect. You don't need her to explain, you don't need her to clarify, you don't need one more message to give you permission to move forward, because the moment she stopped showing up was the moment you should have started letting go. And if you didn't then, do it now. Not slowly, not softly, completely. Cut it. Stop waiting for people who made their choice. Start becoming the kind of man who never puts his mission on hold for maybe. Do you want to know what waiting costs you? It costs you momentum, confidence, purpose. Waiting tells your subconscious that someone else controls your pace, and that belief will sabotage every area of your life. In the gym, you'll hesitate. In your business, you'll stall. In your goals, you'll flinch, because you've trained yourself to stop moving unless someone gives you a green light. But a man doesn't need permission to progress. He doesn't need someone's reply to keep building. He doesn't press pause on his legacy for the hope of a text. He creates, he advances, he dominates, he keeps going, because life rewards motion, not indecision. So if you're sitting there thinking, maybe she'll come back, ask yourself this: would you want a woman who only shows up after your absence begins to hurt? Would you want someone who only replies once she senses you're finally letting go? That's not love, that's ego. And your life is too precious to be dictated by someone else's delay. You were made for more than holding your breath. You were made to walk boldly, to speak clearly, to choose yourself, even when others don't. The man who refuses to wait is the man who refuses to be forgotten. He moves with or without applause, with or without reply, with or without her. Because he understands that his destiny is not tied to the timeliness of someone else's attention. It's tied to the depth of his own commitment, to himself. So stop waiting. Get up, go harder, train deeper, build faster, expand wider, speak louder, and let her wonder what happened to the man who used to watch his phone. Let her miss the version of you that once paused his life for her message. Because that man, he doesn't exist anymore. He's been replaced by someone too focused to freeze, too disciplined to delay, too powerful to pause. And when she finally reaches out, if she ever does, she won't find a man waiting. She'll find a man who moved so far beyond her expectations that she barely recognizes him. And that's your win. Mistake 7. Trying to be nice to win her over. You thought being kind would be enough. You thought if you just showed her you cared, respected her space, sent thoughtful texts, complimented her style, remembered little details, stayed consistent, stayed polite, stayed gentle, she would see your heart and realize you were the one. You believed niceness was the key, that your ability to show restraint, to avoid pressure, to be soft-spoken, humble and agreeable would make her feel safe, appreciated, and eventually attracted. But that's not how it played out, because she didn't melt. She drifted. She didn't warm to your gentleness. She evaporated into indifference. And you're sitting there asking yourself, why? What did I do wrong? I was nothing but nice. That's exactly it. You were nice. You were easy, predictable, available. You were everything she said she wanted, until you gave it. And then she stopped replying. Because niceness is not magnetism. Niceness is not tension. Niceness is not leadership. It's the absence of edge, the absence of risk, the absence of emotional challenge. She didn't feel butterflies when you sent good morning texts every day without fail. She didn't feel electricity when you told her she was beautiful before she earned your affection. She didn't get excited when she knew exactly how you'd act in every scenario, because nothing you did was unexpected. You gave her emotional certainty, and in return, she gave you distance. Not because she wanted to punish you, but because nothing about your presence made her heart race. And women don't crave comfort, they crave aliveness. They want to feel something unpredictable, yet safe, something grounded, but not passive, something strong. And strong isn't always nice. Strong is clarity. Strong is boundaries. Strong is truth. And the truth is, she didn't reject you because you were wrong. She rejected you because you were forgettable. You were polite, respectful, overly attentive. And in that niceness, you erased your edge. You dimmed your opinion. You softened your standards. You tolerated the flakiness. You said, it's okay when it wasn't. You said, I understand when you didn't. You said, take your time when you wanted her to show up. And you did it all with a smile. But under that smile was pain, a growing resentment that she wasn't responding the way she was supposed to, that your goodness wasn't being rewarded, that your patience wasn't being returned, because you were sold a lie, That being a good guy means being the best version of what a woman says she wants. But most women don't actually know what ignites attraction. They only know how to describe what feels safe. And safe doesn't mean desire. Safe doesn't mean tension. Safe doesn't keep her up at night replaying your words. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. You bought into a culture that taught men to neuter their edge in the name of kindness. That made you believe desire and discipline can't live in the same house. That if you ever showed your power, your preferences, your standards, your expectations, you'd scare her off. So you didn't. You suppressed your frustration. You hid your disappointment. You bit your tongue. You bent over backward. And still, she left. Because she didn't feel you. She didn't feel your presence. She didn't feel that gravitational pull of a man so rooted in his values that he never needs to explain them. That's what creates desire. Not the man who agrees with everything she says, but the man who challenges her thinking while honoring her essence. And you became agreeable. You became soft clay, and eventually you became invisible. Because niceness without power is just passive obedience. It's emotional servitude wrapped in politeness. It's inauthentic. And women feel it. They feel the gap between what you say and what you truly want. They feel when your compliments are currency, when your kindness is a strategy, when your patience is a mask, and they reject it, not always consciously, but instinctively. Because attraction isn't logical, it's primal, it's chemical, it's rooted in the subtle tension between presence and mystery. And the moment she can predict you, she stops feeling you. So what do? You stop using niceness as a weapon. You stop believing that being endlessly available is the same as being valuable. You stop apologizing for having preferences. You stop agreeing with things you don't believe just to keep her close. You stop offering unlimited empathy to someone who's never earned your energy. And you start leading. You lead yourself. You lead your time. You lead your purpose. You lead your relationships by becoming someone who knows where he's going, with or without her. That's when the shift happens. That's when your energy changes. That's when women feel you, not because you're rude or arrogant or cruel, but because you're certain. And certainty creates gravity. It creates emotional polarity. It makes her feel like she's finally standing in front of a man, not a boy pretending to be perfect. Because the truth is, you don't want to be nice. You want to be real, raw, grounded. You want to say no and mean it. You want to walk away without bitterness. You want to offer your heart, not your leash. And when you do that, when you reclaim your power from politeness, everything changes. You don't chase anymore. You choose. You don't hope anymore. You lead. You don't prove anymore. You embody. And the next time a woman stands in front of you, she won't feel niceness. She'll feel presence. Not a doormat, not a lapdog, but a grounded, directed, awakened man. A man who knows that being kind isn't enough unless it's backed by truth, strength, direction, and unwavering self-respect. That man, he's unforgettable. That man, he never waits to be chosen, because he already chose himself. If you've made it this far, then deep down, you're done being ignored, done chasing, done pretending that being nice is a strategy. You've felt the weight of waiting, the shame of double texting, the regret of pouring your heart out to someone who couldn't care less. This is your line in the sand. You either stay in the cycle or you break it forever. The Stoic relationship blueprint isn't just an ebook. It's the truth no one told you, the clarity you've been starving for, and the strategy that will save you years of pain, confusion, and wasted potential. It's written for men like you, men who've been left on red, who've felt the sting of being good and still overlooked, who've tried everything they were taught, only to be discarded. And now, you don't beg, you build. You click that link in the comments. You download the ebook and you reclaim everything they told you to hide. It's yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits, just the raw truth you can turn to whenever you want. If you're ready, comment "Never Again" right now. Hit like to push this truth into more hands. Subscribe if you believe more men deserve to wake up, and let this be the moment your life finally changed. For good.